Beginning with Jack Smith, the experience he has, the appeals that we're seeing on that case in January, your thoughts?
Well, he is uniquely qualified to prosecute former head of state. But as you pointed out, he doesn't have a perfect track record. And so I think, in my experience, Ari, I learned a lot more from my defeats than I did from my victories, as both when I was a prosecutor and as a defense attorney. I actually think he's using that to construct a case that is more airtight against Trump. And I think you can see by the ways he pulled his punches, not by not charging insurrection, by not taking on some of the First Amendment issues that he did, by trying to go directly to the Supreme Court to deal with an issue that now could potentially delay his case. I actually think you see Jack Smith being more careful than he has been in the past to try to have an airtight conviction here.
Yeah, and we're drawn on that experience here as we look at a year that, of course, began in many ways with Donald Trump's indictments, and that was something that now has been sort of absorbed as part of American life, law, and politics, and yet was a big deal. January next month, we'll have the D.C. Court of Appeals hearing the coup case. And so, Renato, on that case, which everyone's watching, I want to mention that Jack Smith just today did ask the court to continue to bar Donald Trump from using any conspiracy theories in that case, which, again, he has to win the appeal. Smith, though, writing, basically, the court should reject any disinformation and attempts to inject what the DOJ calls politics into the proceeding. Meanwhile, Michigan Supreme Court also had a ruling that will echo for many people because we're tracking this over the course of December. We've seen this go both ways, but Trump will remain on that state's ballot, according to the court. And the United States Supreme Court, of course, is not yet getting involved in the DOJ coup case. Jack Smith actually was trying to invite them in, Renato, as you know, to speed it up. Your thoughts on all of that and what we expect to be, if this trend line continues, an election year next year, Iowa caucus next month, January appeals court, January 9th appeals hearing on this. All of this stuff's going to keep kicking around.
Yeah, pretty busy for a slow news day, right? First of all, look, what Jack Smith filed in that motion, he was 100% on target, Ari. All of those points that Trump might try to make or his attorneys might try to make during a trial are completely irrelevant as to whether or not he's guilty as charged. It's irrelevant what his thoughts are about, Joe Biden or whether he thinks the prosecution's political. Of course, the challenge is going to be, will Judge Chutkan be able to shut down his attorneys when they try to make those arguments anyways in defiance of her order? And that's what I anticipate happening. It's a showdown that has occurred in many criminal trials. His defense attorneys want to insert irrelevant, unimportant factoids into the trial to try to sway the jury. So that's going to happen, and that's going to unfold a trial. I think it's going to be a dramatic moment. As far as the Michigan Supreme Court goes, I'm not surprised because that appeal only dealt with the primary ballot. There are some provisions of Michigan law that make clear that under Michigan law, everyone has to be listed on the primary ballot, regardless of whether they're eligible. However, I do think that that's something that is still going to get ultimately up to the United States Supreme Court from that Colorado case. And given the composition of the United States Supreme Court, we can't be completely positive about how that's going to turn out, given that Donald Trump appointed.
Yeah, and that's news just about the court in Michigan. There's separate news dating back to the pressure Trump put on Michigan officials in 2020. Karl Rove, who's a very conservative Republican, although doesn't agree with Trump on everything, and you could be a conservative Republican without supporting coups, as you know, Renato, talking about how that call, which involved then President Trump, and then losing outgoing President Trump, as well as the party chair of the GOP, and what that means. Take a listen.
Real quick, is it's a problem for Ronna McDaniel as well? She's usually very cautious about things like this.
Oh, I think it is. I think the chairman is in trouble here because she's saying to them, if you agree to change your decision on certification in Wayne County, we'll get you lawyers to stand by you. And again, I think that was highly inappropriate.
Renato, as we go towards the busy January and the Iowa caucus and the official start of the presidential campaign, You have these kind of skirmishes going, and we've said the courts will ultimately adjudicate who broke which laws. Some people have been convicted related to Jan 6, some people have not. The certification battles, for example, have not resulted in many convictions yet. But how should we, as thinking people, and you as a prosecutor, as a member of the bar, how should we think about the fact that so much of this has been normalized and mainlined, where it's right up to or over the line of adjudicating an election without fraud or crime?
I'll tell you, that's the reason that the case that we have in the January 6th case, and some of these other cases, by the way, there is a prosecution in Michigan of some officials there. There is also a matter in Arizona. Of course, we have the prosecution in Georgia. That's why they're so important, Ari, because we can't normalize in our politics stealing elections. It ultimately is going to undercut our constitutional system that we have in the United States. And I think really the timing that we have of these cases is so important because, as you point out, the Iowa caucus is weeks away. And we ultimately have the Republican Party married Donald Trump and basically committing themselves to him even before we know whether or not he's being convicted of a felony. So very, very serious time for our democracy. And ultimately, I think these court cases in many ways are going to determine the future of our constitutional system here in the United States.
Yeah, and briefly, before I lose you here, Renato, when you look at the D.C. Court of Appeals reviewing Donald Trump's requests to get total immunity, of which there's not great precedent for that, Nixon took a pardon precisely because no one thought he had immunity from everything after leaving the White House. If the D.C. Court of Appeals says, no, there's no immunity, do you expect the Supreme Court to leave that alone, or do you expect them to take that case, which could have the functional result of vastly delaying Jack Smith's timeline?
I actually think the United States Supreme Court will take its sweet time and then decide not to take the case. That's what I think is going to happen. Ultimately, I don't really think that the majority of the justices in the United States Supreme Court are in any hurry to speed Donald Trump to his trial. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to want to duck a decision that would be a blow against Donald Trump because it's indefensible, the arguments he's making. They're novel. In other words, never been made before because no president's been indicted before. But they're also absurd. And I can't imagine a majority of this Supreme Court, even who they are, signing on to that.